Good space time, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast, a source for educational insights into the Web3 universe and your connection hub to discovering the people that contribute to building the decentralized world. Today, we are joined by Tommy Eastman from Foundry. We talk about supply and access, crypto fundamentals, and decentralization as a spectrum. We touch upon smaller players being priced out, OpenAI, and quadratic voting. Finally, we discuss bias, trust, expanding your scope, and symbiotic relationships. If you enjoy the Citizen Web3 podcast, please share this episode to your favorite social platform and help us spread Web3 values into the universe.
There's so much in so much in crypto that you can very quickly end up like a dog chasing its tail, right? But I'm super interested in it. The large players just gravitate towards other large players. Large supply meets large demand, and everybody's priced out. Trust nothing, which is perfect, right? Because that's sort of don't trust, verify, right? That's sort of right in line with crypto. Everything inherently has bias.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast. And today I have Tommy with me from Foundry Digital. Tommy, hi, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Serge. Appreciate it. Excited to be on.
Yeah, man. You said at the beginning, right before the recording, I said, you're a low-key person. That's what you said. I love that. That connects a lot with me, man. Honestly, people who listen to this show, they know. And this is personally something that I'm, it's a value for me being low-key. But still, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, even though you said you're low-key, and say anything that you think relates to Tommy. Who is Tommy? What does he do? What does he do in Web3? How did he get to this life? And so on and so forth, man. It's all yours.
Awesome. Yeah. Very open-ended question to start. I like it. I would say I almost stumbled on Web3 accidentally, which I'm sure most people can relate with. I was working on AI stuff, so I was doing just really basic, like convolutional neural networks for object detection, like with remote sensing stuff. So super interested in AI ML. And then I saw a job posting at Foundry to start working in the AI ML space, Web3. I didn't really know anything about Web3. I had traded Bitcoin a little bit, but certainly was no expert and didn't even understand how it worked. And that's how I kind of got into Web3, is just via Foundry, working at Foundry. And quickly got really, really interested in the decentralized AI / DePIN space as it's now being branded. But really, I think of it as a series of decentralized digital commodities. So incentivizing people to bring their digital commodities online, whether it's compute or storage or machine learning models. So I quickly got really interested in the space and sort of tried to carve out a niche at Foundry of being a node operator that's committed to providing, data center grade GPUs to Web3 protocols. I think you see a lot of companies, a lot of like large Bitcoin miners purchasing HPC and hosting HPC, but not really with the commitment of supplying to these decentralized protocols. And I think it is really, in my opinion, kind of perfectly aligned with the ethos of the Web3 space to make that commitment to supply permissionlessly and provide permissionless access to this really important compute. Yeah, so that's kind of what brought me to where I am in Web3 today, working for Foundry, sort of guiding us through the DePIN DAI space, which has been super exciting with all the hype around it lately. So much excitement and buzz compared to even just a year ago. It's been really cool to kind of watch that evolve.
We will definitely get into it. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but we are also a validator, and I'm personally into ML and AI as well, and we also help to build AI projects. But we'll definitely get into this conversation. But before I'm gonna dig a little bit the top a little bit, if you don't mind. But I mean, come on. I mean, AI, ML, okay, but Web3, dude, let's try to get to the bottom of it. I mean, where did it start? I mean, you didn't just wake up and go, I love ML, and then suddenly the job posting came along. I mean, why not go to work? I don't know, in the valley. Why not go to work online? Why not? What draws you to Web3? What is the curiosity in Web3 particularly?
Yeah, that's
Why?
a great question. Why not the Valley? I would say I'm not smart enough. Uh, not smart enough to work in the Valley.
And don't get me started. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that, man. I don't believe that.
But yeah, I think I'm really interested in. So my background's physics. I was a physics undergrad, and the thought behind that decision was really just how can I make sure that I'm doing cool work? How can I create a foundation that allows me to do work that I really enjoy, and work that I really enjoy tends to be I would say tech that's on the frontier. So not very established, sort of an R&D type of industry. And I think there was just a lot of alignment in Web3 with that. I didn't have a ton of, I remember telling family and friends, oh, I'm going to take this job in crypto. And everybody's like, whoa, that's super risky. And it didn't seem, sure, I guess from the outside, it seems risky. It didn't seem risky to me because I felt like, even if something doesn't work out, you're experiencing really new tech, and that's something that's exciting to me. I love to be doing stuff like getting up to date on a protocol that doesn't have great documentation, and nobody even really knows exactly what it does, but being able to kind of go through the problem solving process, think critically, and figure out what the tech is, and then figure out what the product market fit is. And so it's been a really interesting ride for me. I think I've been especially impressed with just of course, there's a ton of vaporware in crypto, right? It's just the nature of it. But I do believe that there's a lot of really cool tech being done as well. Like, I think the fundamentals of crypto are really strong. There's a ton of really cool cryptography. There's so much cutting edge tech, and being exposed to that is exactly why I wanted to get into this field.
Man, cryptography is probably, in my opinion, at least, and actually, it is not my personal opinion. I remember being I think it was Bitcoin Badger, or what was it, or something like that. It was a Bitcoin only conference like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was with couple of cryptographers, and one of them was quite well. Both of them were quite famous in this area, but it was their words to say that it's okay, because I was saying, oh, can you help me to understand this and this, because cryptography is like there's like the most ununderstood field for me in crypto, and they were like, it's okay, cryptographers don't understand cryptography, it's normal, it's okay. And I was like, dudes, but do you understand cryptography? Are you into cryptography? Are you into like those kind of things? I mean, the most, of course, the easiest question, do you understand how a key pair works? But then people start to dive into it, and it gets magic stuff. There is some voodoo stuff in there that is very difficult to understand a little bit, at least for me personally.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely I do not claim to have a deep understanding of cryptography in any way, more so a hobbyist. I try to keep there's so much in so much in crypto that you can very quickly end up like a dog chasing its tail, right? But I'm super interested in it. I'd say I've got like a high level understanding, but can't get me into the technical weeds on that. I try to stay in the technical weeds only on the DAI deep in space, for the sanity of myself.
Still, man, I have a lot of respect for people to go to cryptography, because I have seen tries of for example, the guy who helped Oleg, the guy who helped to write slingshots for Stellar at one point. He was trying to do, I remember, with his ex-wife or ex-girlfriend or whatever. Sorry, I shouldn't really say things like that, right? Online, right? So I don't know who it was, but it was a long time ago. I'm sure it's okay. Like short videos of explanatory video. What is cryptography? And I have lots of respect, because it's such a difficult field. But anyways, you mentioned one topic which I didn't think I was going to jump into it, but it's a topic that I think is very important. And you mentioned access and documentation, APIs, and I started to think and make notes here, RPCs. And what do you think? What's your opinion? Because today, I mean, this industry has been building, and I'm not talking about since 2009. I'm talking about really like building, let's say at least since 2014, 15. And as in like the whole industry has been active, not just Bitcoin. And until today, my personal opinion, or at least, devil's advocate opinion here, that, and I kind of agree with it, to be honest, that it's hard to call it Web3 because, when we talk about access and APIs and RPC endpoints and all that, that is as centralized as even worse in some points what Web2 has, because Web2 at least has the infra and the security to provide it. Web3 today cannot afford to provide. What's your take? What's your opinion on all this side of Web3?
Yeah, that's I definitely am in agreement with you a lot there. I think decentralization is certainly a spectrum. The way the term is used in practice in Web3. I think you're seeing though a lot of moves in the right direction towards decentralization, and I think that's the important part. And there's always going to be centralization at some scale, right? It's just sort of how economies at scale work. Things are going to naturally shift toward centralization. But to me, I think an important part as well is who is in control of that centralization, like who has the ownership. And so I think generally Web3 is really important because it shifts that ownership out of government control in a way. And the ability still, I think, I think one critical feature of Web3 that is still really, really important is permissionless access to things, which I do still think rings true and holds true in a lot of cases. And that's something that we're trying to, on the kind of the deep inside, make a really important point. Like, it's so difficult right now to be able, like, if you want a GPU, it is really, really difficult to go to AWS, GCP, get a GPU. You're going to pay a ton. Often they won't even have the availability. And if you want any sort of scale, if you want more than a couple GPUs, you're going to need to lock into a contract. And I think that's really prohibitive. It's not even about who the central authority is, but it's about the cost, right? Like, any smaller players are priced out. So even if anybody can quote unquote access these commodities, in practice that doesn't actually happen because the large players just gravitate towards other large players. Large supply meets large demand, and everybody's priced out. So I think in alignment with the decentralized thesis, I think the ability to service kind of the entire spectrum of the market is a really important thing. And being able to allow players of different sizes on the supply side and the demand side and kind of create that marketplace is, while the infra itself may be less decentralized than we would hope, I think creating that market really plays into the whole decentralized aspect and is important to note.
I think you're touching on something, at least to me, very dear to my heart personally, because, well, first we are a validator who uses GPUs, and our GPU nodes actually run, but I don't want to talk about us, but I just want to give it as a statement. Our GPU nodes run from home for bare metal is actually our bare metal, not in a data center. But the reason for that is the price, because no, well, we're trying to move all the infra now, but the reason we moved the GPU infra was seriously because it was impossible to it was not, it was a matter of decentralization, but it was also a matter of price. And what I'm trying to say is that I'm kind of lucky because I've been in the industry for a while, but what you're saying is absolutely correct about the smaller players and the big players. And what I'm saying when I'm lucky is that, okay, even though that I'm kind of personally not dependent on the project feeding me, and I have the ability to feed the project with some capital because I have been in this industry for some years, it gives me the play space. But I can tell you that what I'm doing right now, creating all this decentralized infrastructure, I'm using some quotations here, but because it is a bit in quotations, at least for now, it does cost a lot of money, and it's not cheap. I'm not sure how players who just get into the industry are supposed to jump onto it in the same way that people like myself have been here for 10 years, or like Foundry has been here for several years as a project, can afford to do it and know how to do it, have the resources. So yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I'm not sure. Do you think there's a solution for that? Do you think there is anything that can be done, maybe not tomorrow, but over the spectrum of time?
Yeah, I think I think you're right on. I think it's a really difficult question. I think it's expensive. It's really expensive to get into hosting bare metal hardware. We have the expertise to do it, so it's a lot easier for us to kind of like we didn't pivot, but we expanded into this data center GPU hardware hosting space because we had a lot of expertise built up from the Bitcoin side and from the staking side. So it was a lot easier for us to go here than for somebody to start from scratch. The best way that I think about that is, can we kind of pave the way to allow smaller players to get involved as well, right? Because I don't think, like, we're not under the impression that we're going to go out and compete with massive data centers and compete with OpenAI, compete with Microsoft. That's not our goal. It's to service a different market, which I think is to pivot a little bit. I think is really important for the entire decentralized AI community to understand. I think kind of using OpenAI as the North Star is, this is what we need to get to, I think is a bad way of framing it. I think natural synergies between blockchain and AI/GPU computing should be taken advantage of to service different markets. And there's certain things we're going to be able to do better than centralized players. And there's certain things that we're never going to do as well as centralized players. And I think that's really important framing. But to answer your original question, I think by paving the way and kind of bootstrapping supply for these decentralized networks like Akash, I think it allows it allows a market to exist that can then allow smaller players to enter. Like, there's a great market on Akash right now. There's a lot of demand coming because there's a lot of supply, and these cards are in such high demand. And what that allows is one, the Akash team has created really, really good documentation and made the process really easy by onboarding providers like us. So now it's really easy, I think, for anybody with a card to supply to the network. Like Greg Asori, the CEO of Overclock Labs, creator of Akash there, he bought like a 4090 gaming setup, and when he's not using it for gaming, he's supplying it to Akash really easily. So I think, and that's that's a great starting point that you could grow from if it's something that you were serious about and you wanted to get to the point where you had, a bunch of GPUs that you were supplying and making money on. I think by medium-sized players like Foundry kind of paving the way for this, I think it's created the marketplace and the onboarding process that allows smaller players to enter more easily.
Allow me to play a little bit of devil's advocate. This is why I always say to the guests, I want to come around to see if I'm going to annoy them. So let me be a little devil's advocate here. I don't necessarily agree with the opinion I'm going to say now, but I definitely want to make it heard because it's an opinion that should exist, in my opinion. Now, a second of advertisement for the listeners, if you want to find out more about Akash, check out our interviews with Greg from 3 years ago, I believe, or even 4 years ago, where they just started. And there's a lot of insights into that. But back to you, Tommy. Like, here is a devil's advocate like argument to what you just said. Akash is not the first network to try and build this. We had a lot of other things like Golem, and there was many, not many more before. Sorry, I think Golem was probably one of the first ones, and I'm not sure if there were any before. I don't remember right now. But anyways, there's been other tries, and those tries they didn't succeed. They don't seem to succeed. They seem. The question is because let me go a bit more abstract here. So what I'm trying to say is here, what if the solution, because today, you're talking about, like, for example, you're saying, oh, Greg has his gaming infra that he supplies. Now, I was looking at the report of NVIDIA sales of the last quarter from Facebook, so Meta, sorry, excuse me, Meta, Google, and all of them are buying the cards. The last quarter, just the last quarter of the last year, some of these buys were bigger than half of the GDP of the countries we know. So what if the solution is not there? What if the solution is more simple? And this is the opinion I want to ask you a question about. What if the solution is something like quadratic voting? Like, for example, I've seen networks that say, hey, let's give those validators or those who supply less more, those who supply more less. So again, like I said, devil's advocate opinion here, but I'm interested what you think. Because there's already so much to supply from the big players that we will never beat. Could that be a solution, going the distribution way and the software way, or no? So it has to be hardware.
Yeah. So I guess, can you help me understand a little bit more? So are you talking about, should we be trying to, target those really big purchases and supply those? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm saying different. I'm saying, if we're talking about everybody entering the market, should we, instead of saying, here is what everybody can give here and they can receive something, because the bigger players will have always more to give, hence they can receive more. What if the solution is more simple? And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but what if the solution is just to give the smaller players more, even though they supply less, but because we know they're the smaller players, let's give them more. So it's like quadratic voting, sort of speak, like we know that we will, for somebody who has, let's say, a validator with 100 tokens. I'm giving an example of validators here, but you can extend it to anybody who supplies GPU, for example. Let's say a validator with such and such power will only get so little, whether a validator who supplies a lot less power and will be at the bottom will get a lot more. Same with GPUs. Let's say I'm supplying a house grade GPU. Should I be getting more rewards than the guy who is supplying, I don't know, NVIDIA server grade GPUs to Akash, if it's possible, of course, to supply such. Akash, again, is very abstract here. I'm saying Akash, but
yeah, sure.
Could be any network out there. So the question is, just to resume, whether the solution to help sort of decentralize the market has to be only bound to allowing more players to supply their hardware, or can a solution to decentralize the market, in your opinion, can be spread to actually, distribution and giving people who less more and more less, that kind of solution? I don't know if it makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't thought of it that way. Can we sort of provide extra incentive to make sure that we get more players, a more diverse set of players, and allow maybe consumer grade hardware to earn the same rewards or more rewards compared to data center grade hardware? Putting my Foundry hat on, I would say, no, us with data center grade hardware want to earn more. But also remove the Foundry hat. And I still think it's important that really the way that I see it is it should be a free market. And really, like, I think the most successful kind of DePIN protocols don't want to put any restrictions on the pricing, or even have really any effect on pricing at all. They just want to create the marketplace that allows that access, and most importantly, access at scale. And then the people will decide what they want to pay, right? Like at Foundry, if I go and take our A100s and set the price at $8 an hour, nobody's going to pay. If I go set it at 20 cents an hour, they'll never be open, and somebody's going to hold that and probably just re-rent it out. So I think my thought is less is more when it comes to kind of thinking about the pricing and just the creation of the market, making sure it's as seamless a UI UX as possible, as seamless an onboarding experience for providers as possible is the most important piece.
Yeah, and it seems that like AI is kind of, at least not AI, but GPUs, or at least that AI need GPUs, right? It seems that they kind of make it more difficult for their adoption in a sense. And I disagree with that, but a lot of people do say that. But I can see from what we are building that you know, that the pretty much the costs of running a safe blockchain with AI, and not just the node, but you know, RPCs, archives, whatever, blah blah blah, surrounding it, are really astonishing. And I want to talk with you a little bit about the AI market, because I know it's also a topic, like you mentioned, and did my little research. I know it's a topic of yours that you enjoy talking about. Here is, I'm going to start from the being devil's advocate. I'm terrible today. I'm sorry. My apologies, Tommy. So today, the blockchain market, and often the crypto market, the blockchain market, likes to put tags on things. And people, as soon as they see the tag, they're like, "Oh my god, it's good, said blockchain. Let's buy it." Now, unfortunately, at least personally, and we had a lot over the past 4 years guests from several AI projects, which in my opinion are fascinating. The stuff they explain, you know. But there's a lot of projects there that, man, I'm sorry to say that, but they've got nothing to do with the AI. They've got the tag AI, but that's got nothing to do with machine learning. It's got nothing to do with, I'm not even talking artificial intelligence. Let's just talk machine learning right now, right? But I know it's synonym, but still. So what's your opinion here? How do we, considering we want to decentralize market, we don't want to regulate the market to, at least, I don't know. Yeah, again, matter of subjective opinions. What do we do? How do we help people to understand where is AI? What's your personal like advice here for a user who opens CoinGecko looking for those gems, you know, and people say, no, joking aside, but you know, a person, you know, they're trying to do their research. What's your advice? How to really spot an AI project from the shite that's out there? Pardon my French.
That's a great question. I feel like this is something that when I first got into the industry, I took everything at face value. As like my first axiom was trust, right? So I would, you know, read a white paper or see a project and be like, wow, this is amazing. Look at the AI, the AI research that's going on here. This has, you know, endless utility. And I very, very quickly learned to actually completely invert that first axiom and say, trust nothing, which is perfect, right? Because that's sort of don't trust, verify, right? That's sort of right in line with crypto. And so I think when I truthfully, I've become a skeptic when I first look at projects. Um, I tend to assume that it is vaporware, and then um, only through pretty significant kind of due diligence do I shift that assumption. Um, so I think if I'm giving advice to a user that's looking for an AI project that has real utility, I would say um, two major things. One would just be volume of projects. You have to see a lot of projects and get involved with the community, read the code, and over time you'll start to get, I think, a pretty good intuition for what is vaporware and what is real and what has real utility. And then the second piece is, where are there natural synergies between blockchain and AI? Like for me, the federated learning is a big thing that I look for. I think that's a really interesting use case. Federated learning exists in Web 2, right? In traditional practice, it's a distributed training system in practice, and blockchain's distributed, right? So I think the natural synergy there, to me, makes sense. So I think looking for those natural synergies is the best indicator of, is this a real project, or is this something that's, might have meaning in Web 2, but somebody's decided just to try to slap a blockchain or blockchain X AI sticker on it, and mint a token.
Yeah, minting tokens is another, I guess, difficult subject. But before jumping onto that, still to stay with AI, what's for you though the AI? Let's go even a step before that. What is decentralized artificial intelligence for you? What is the division between normal artificial intelligence and decentralized artificial intelligence? Where does it start and one end?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I almost see it in to answer, I guess, a tangential question, but just rephrased a little differently. I think the way I think about it is there's bias in everything, right? Everything inherently has bias, right? There's a certain group of developers that train the AI. They selected a certain data set. They were guiding it towards a certain goal. And so there's obvious impact on the end results, given the group of developers, the company, the controls they put on it, the data that they use to train. So bias isn't, or I guess bias is in my opinion inherently harmful in a vacuum. So if you have one model and it was trained by one dev and on one specific data set, right, and that's what everybody in the world interacts with, you're going to have a ton of unhappy people in the world. So I think the easy solution to that is, how can we open up the gates to allow as many developers on as many data sets, like create as much diversity in model production as possible. And so rather than kind of that centralized versus decentralized, it's how do we get to the most model diversity possible? What steps do we need to take? And let's execute on that.
I want to say amen to that, brother, because I'm not a religious person, but I'm going to say, the blocks amen, because man, people are really seriously underestimating how much this in particularly teaching the model itself and in particularly putting biases on that. It's interesting. I some years ago, about 4 years ago, when I was helping Bostrom to launch, with their initial building that they were doing. Can't say I was helping them to launch. It's a bit too loud, I guess. But I had a big argument with because the guys that they're using knowledge graphs to build, but it's their version of a knowledge graph. It's not a textbook definition of a knowledge graph. And basically what they do is they allow any user, any developer to teach the model anything the fuck they want, regardless of whether it's true or false, as long as the user uses the resources to do that. And then there was an academia guy, and he had such a big argument. He could not, it was about 4 years ago, and I would really love to hear his opinion today, because of course things have changed. But for him, the fact that, anyone could say anything to the model, and that would be teaching the model without even saying, okay, this is this type of file or this type of data, allowing the user to decide on the type as well. And for him, it was a big thing. But today I would love to, but basically what you're saying, allow people to do what they want. If they want to spend their money on saying that a dog is a cat, for some reason, this is, if somebody was willing to, I don't know, to stake $100,000, let's say, and to bet that this image of a cat is actually a lion, maybe that's important to them. Maybe for some reason, if they're willing to put $100,000 on it, maybe let's take that bet on, So that's what I'm saying. What's going to happen at the end? It's a different question. It's an experiment, but let's take the bet on. This is a free market, no? If he wants to do that. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And I wish more, I would hear this opinion more often of allowing, decentralizing. Have you seen, I don't want to go into examples because I don't want to talk about, one project over the other, but in your opinion, have you seen any interesting open source LLMs? I don't want to maybe, if you want to go into projects, feel free, but yeah, like I'm personally trying to avoid naming projects because it is very, very subjective with AI. So I'm scared even of saying names and then like, wow, boom, But have you seen any interesting models that you would suggest for people who are want to research into that can check out?
Yeah, for sure. I think you're starting to see people care about this a lot more, right? Like you saw, um, like GPT 3 and 4 or 3 and 4 had some strange, um, I guess let's just say nuance when it comes to how you interact with it and the prompts that you're able to get out of it versus what you're not able to get out of it. And then um, Gemini was even worse, right? Gemini was uh, really, really difficult to get. It just had really, really strange behavior. They clearly showed these biases that we're talking about. Um, and so I think these things have served as really big red flags to a lot of people because it's really not, you don't have to do a ton of thinking to see how these potentially like harmless biases in the context that we're talking about can easily end up being a lot more harmful to a lot of different groups if they are the only sources of truth, right? Like I think if you're a believer that AI is going to be deeply integrated with humans in the future, right? Like I don't think it's a massive leap to say that in 10 years, much, much sooner, I believe, but 10 years, let's say, um, nobody's going to be just typing into Google and doing like a standard web search, right? Like you're going to be interacting with AI. It's so much better than a Google search.
Man, Neuralink. Well, just one
Yeah,
word, Neuralink. That's
yeah,
it, right? I mean,
Neuralink
it's
exactly, right?
wow. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Um, and so I think like if you believe that integration is going to happen and AI is going to be a big part of our lives, the fact that it could be controlled by 3 or 4 groups, whether it's OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, um, I think is really concerning. And you just have no idea what's going on under the hood, right? I think there's clearly a world in which, and this happens to some extent on Google too, but I think it's a little more transparent, or on a normal search too, but it's a little more transparent. Like I could, interact with my AI and say, what pair of shoes should I buy? You have no idea what kind of deal is done behind the closed doors. So you have no idea what quality product you're getting. Whereas if you have a ton of diversity and all these models are trained in different places, maybe you go different places and ask different questions and kind of see where these biases may exist. I think Freedom GPT is an interesting project. They're kind of doing something similar. They're trying to open source models that have like no restrictions. Um, and I think I'm like sort of a free market maximalist in that, people should be able to create the models and supply the models that they want. And it should be up to end users if they don't like that. Like if it's producing, hateful and bad content, people aren't going to interact with that. And it's kind of up. This is getting a little grandiose, but it's kind of on the conscious of the collective conscious of society to guide what is valuable, what's not valuable, what's harmful, what's not harmful. And I don't think that should come specific or solely from, a closed door corporation.
Absolutely, man. This is like, when people, in my opinion, I don't think it's too grandiose in terms of, so it's the responsibility of society because it is, because there has been always, it doesn't matter what the government or the democracy or tyranny is. People still kill, people still murder, people still rape, people still. It doesn't matter. It's not the type of the government or the lack of government, because I'm an anarchist, right? But it's not about that. It's about the society. It's about our choices and whether we want. So I absolutely agree with you. We did experiments, but fuck that. I have a different question for you to follow that up, because it's a bit of more of a philosophical question, but it's following up what you say. Do you think we as humanity, or at least the Web3 society, are we ready for that? Are we ready to sort of like click the button and say, well, Now you guys are responsible. That's it. No more third parties, no more black boxes, intermediaries, no more, now everything you decide, guys, whatever it is. Are we ready for that?
That's a great question. I think you'll need a much more enlightened and intelligent person to give you a great answer to
come
that
on,
one.
man. But I think you are. Come on, man. What's your opinion?
I think I really do. I'm a really big believer in people being innately good, and so I definitely believe that we're ready, and people will rise to the occasion, and be responsible. I think that people tend to meet the bar that you set for them, and if that bar is set really low, and by that I mean if the government controls everything, people don't have to think, people don't feel responsible, people don't see that their quote unquote vote matters, then that's how people will exist. And, they won't take on that responsibility. They won't think critically about things. But I think if you raise that bar and say what your decisions are, how you interact with things, how you treat people, that's what will guide and shape the mechanisms that are created. And in the context of AI, the way in which you interact with AI, the way that you spend your money with AI is going to guide and dictate the way that AI is created. I think people will rise to the occasion, and obviously you'll have your outliers, but I think the vast majority of people will naturally use AI in a very positive way and interact with it in a very positive and safe way. And that will then guide the free market. Like the supply will then follow that demand. And you won't see people, generating harmful AI because they know there's no money they can make out of it. I think money guides all of this stuff. And I think that, society is ready and able to step up and, and have a positive impact and be a positive guide towards creating AI that's aligned with the majority of humanity.
Just to say, I 150% agree with you. And I don't even think that about AI. I think that about everything, including governance, including such, we're not going to go into that because it's a different conversation, but much, much bigger things. Because, let's just to remind everybody, we already went through this with DNS. We already been through this with social networking. We are still at it with DNS and HTTP and trusting somebody and governments and social networking and law and education systems and everything else that doesn't fucking work. But we think that somebody else has got, the $1 million solution to tell us how to do it better than ourselves. So considering AI is such a much bigger fucking, I'm not saying it's bigger than everything else, but it is an aspect that can influence like history really in terms of and that's dangerous, and I think that I hope that what you say, that we are ready, as a society, as at least as a community that can try and say, we don't need closed AI, that people started already to joke on Twitter, but we need really open AI, and not open AI the company, but we really need open AI and alternatives. But I want to, before because AI is a huge topic that I can really talk on about for a long time, and I'm sure we both can. But I want to ask you a couple of things just about Foundry in general, because I've noticed that, and this is it's going to be like a bit of an abstract question, like most of them have been today. I'm sorry about that. Usually they're more on target, I hope. But Foundry, when I look at what you guys do in terms of the networks you validate, the Bitcoin mining, it's cool. This is exactly, you are like my dream client in quotations. I mean, my dream guest, of course. When I say client, I said it on purpose. But in a way, because sometimes I get, validators, and we don't just talk just to validators, but sometimes we get founders, which is even worse, and validators that are very, how to say, they are like, okay, I'm only Ethereum, I'm only Polkadot, I'm only Cosmos, I'm only this, I'm only OpenAI, I'm only Microsoft, I'm only Meta, I'm only one God, I'm only one religion. Now, you guys seem to have beaten that illness, at least to yourselves, at least so it seems to me. Can we talk a little bit about that? Why you guys not like, it's a stupid question, but why aren't you tribalistic? Why don't you follow just Ethereum or just Cosmos or just Polkadot? Why are you able to be like that, to say, hey, everything is okay? What's the difference? What makes you so good in a sense? How can other people follow that?
Yeah, I think it's a really easy answer, honestly. I think we are like very committed at Foundry to the long-term success of this space. And I think when you like, it's really easy to get fixated on token price, and that's when I think people get very dogmatic about a single protocol or a single ecosystem, is because their mind is like, what is the token price today? What is the token price tomorrow? We're able to step back. It's really a top-down thesis, I think, from our CEO and really from DCG. Um, we're able to step back and say, where do we want this space to be in 5 years, in 10 years? And I think zooming out allows us to say, like, when you think about the space in 10 years, if just Polkadot exists, or, if just one of these protocols exists in 10 years, the whole space has failed, right? So I think because we have that end goal in sight, we know that there's going to be a lot of different projects that fill a lot of these gaps. There's really um, there's no one-stop solution for all of the problems that Web3 is trying to tackle, that blockchains are trying to tackle. So I just think expanding your scope to the long term makes it really, really easy to say, oh no, we need to participate in this. We need to support this. This project's great. Let's help out here.
Now, I'm not going to say amen again, but the failing sentence is a very, I think, a quote, in my opinion, that should be taken. If only Polkadot or Cosmos, I never heard this before, but I really think this should be a quote. If only Cosmos exists in Polkadot in 5 years, we failed, right? Absolutely. But still, I'm going to ask, a bit of ground question here. Like, I'm going to ground you up a little bit. You're still a project, though. And there is still a profit in that project, and there is still for profit, I'm assuming there, whether regardless of whether you do the public good or not, which you do. I see, and anybody who goes on your website can see that, but still, how do you select the chains? Because considering you're a bare metal like infra provider as well, yeah, there is a lot of questions here because we're kind of similar. We are small, you're bigger, but still, how do you guys come about and select the chains? Because the chains appear every day, like 20 by 20, and some of them must be good, right? I mean, not all of them are shit. So,
yeah, for sure. That's a great question, and I'll speak to my specific role, kind of in the deep and decentralized AI space. Right, we have a finite amount of hardware, and almost an infinite number of projects that we could supply that hardware to. So truthfully, I think touching upon what we talked about earlier with assessing vaporware versus utility is really important. And the way I think about it personally is, how can we make a few high conviction bets with our hardware? So how can we do a significant amount of due diligence on a project to make sure it has real utility, it has product market fit, the quality of the project is good, like the code is written well, the processes to onboard are strong, and easy to follow. They're focused. The team is focused on the right goals, which to me is almost always an end user interface and user experience. And where can we add, in addition to hardware, kind of our expertise that we've built up from dev tooling standpoint, to support the growth of the project. I think we could easily take a handful of GPUs and send them 30 different places and place all these little bets. But I think where we've seen a lot of success, like Akash again is a great example, is we got deeply integrated in that ecosystem. We worked closely with them. They've provided us support on a bunch of things, and we've in turn been able to provide a bunch of support to them, and I think create like a really good, mutually beneficial kind of symbiotic relationship, that is driving towards that end goal of kind of creating real utility on the chain, and we've really already seen a lot of that. So it's been really cool. But yeah, I think doing like it's a fair amount of due diligence work, truthfully, to kind of assess projects, talk with teams, go through the code, figure out, have a really strong conviction in the space. Again, back to me talking about synergies in the space. I'm looking for specific projects where I see synergy between blockchain and AI or blockchain and GPU, so that I can get a really strong conviction and choose chains to participate in.
On that note, man, I always have a lot of questions and I never be able to ask them. This is unfair. Let me go into the blitz. The blitz is not a blitz really. This is why I'm going to it a bit early, even though, because it's not quick answers. And I'm sure that we're gonna get stuck a little bit on the project question. So I'm gonna ask you 5 questions. You don't have to answer them quick. You can answer them in detail. So the first one is got nothing to do with projects. The first one is going to be, but it will make sense why I went to this now, because it is about projects, the second question. But the first question is about, give me one movie or book or song that has been with you throughout your life, or at least for some time now, that you are kind of like, yeah, it's you, part of you.
Great question. I love that. I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with The Hobbit. I read The Hobbit really young, and I'm a huge Tolkien fan. And that has I think that was what gave me my first taste of like, exploring new worlds. And I think of it in the same way as I think of tech today.
I'm not going to say anything because it's a very similar story. That's all I'm saying. What about one, not project, but okay, you have mentioned ML, AI, and I'm assuming you're going to say that, but one direction, technological direction that arouses curiosity in you, is it going to be ML, machine learning, or is it different technology of direction that you would like to mention that arouses curiosity with you?
Yeah, for sure. I think ML is probably the easy answer. I'd also love to throw cryptography in there as a hobby, as something I'd like to get more into the
hard
weeds
stuff. The hard stuff, man. You have to, you're gonna have to come on and a second time and talk about cryptography, because it's a topic that is really fascinating, and I think we only had over the last 4 years, I believe, only not 2 people, and with one of them there is 2 episodes. But yeah, it's a topic that is, yeah. Anyways, now the question about the projects and why I came to here. Give me, and I'm gonna, because you're big on your research, I'm gonna ask you to give me a couple. Please don't look at this question as a matter of like hype. It's more about what really, like, because you are deep into research. What has really caught your attention lately over the past few months when you've been going into these blockchain projects? Something that is not Ethereum or Polkadot or Cosmos or Near, like not the top projects, please. Something that you were like, oh my God, these guys are really doing the shit.
Sure. Yeah. I think two projects that I think have stood out to me in the last handful of months. Again, it's looking for the natural synergies between AI and blockchain. One is Flock, federated. It stands for Federated Learning on Chain, Flock.io. I think they're a great team, really interesting project. Natural synergies between blockchain and AI. Again, I feel like a broken record with that, but I think it's important.
I like it.
And then I'd also say Nasana is an interesting one, built on Solana. They're looking at consumer grade hardware, but sort of an edge node inference play, which I think is going to end up being really important, is where do these GPUs actually lie in geographic relation to the user, to maximize inference speeds.
It's interesting. I've seen some explorers try to introduce that with validator nodes. I'm not sure how much it caught on, but I have seen those things already. two questions which are going to be a bit more philosophical. I'm also like a broken record, don't worry. That makes both of us with my philosophy. So the first one is, what is one motivational thing that keeps Tommy getting out of bed and researching and building a world that is a slightly better place than it is today?
Yeah, that's a great question that we could probably have a full podcast on. What I would say my like North Star is just creating products that have, real utility. I, uh, I I played basketball in college, and I had a coach once say that you should just always do things that make somebody's life easier. And he was talking about in reference of making sure you throw out your garbage or clean up your tray at the cafeteria. But I think that applies to everything and should be in everybody's mind in their workday. How is what I'm doing making somebody else's life easier? I think that's like a really helpful framework for me when I kind of evaluate what I'm doing and what I want to do with my career.
I was gonna say before that definitely that this topic is something that, to be honest with you, and this is something that I would love to share with all the listeners out there and with yourself as a guest also, that motivation is definitely a theme of the podcast. It's maybe it doesn't sound like that, but I really want the people who build Web3 like yourself to come here and talk to the listeners, to everybody in our community, to share this. Why are you guys doing it? What is the reason? What is really the reason for you, not for you guys? And here's the last question here to maybe also kind of like that has a hint to that. Give me one person or one character, imaginary, dead, alive, relative, doesn't matter, that has been an inspiration for you. It could be a developer, it could be a writer, it could be a cartoon character, it could be a family member. I don't, it doesn't matter, but it has been an inspiration for you throughout all your life. Not a guru, not an idol, but an inspiration. But there's a big difference.
No, that's another good question. I think that answer to me is really easy. For me, it's my parents. They've been it's just incredible. I've had so many opportunities as a result of them, but I've also had such good role models. The way that they go through life with grace and compassion, I think, has been really, really important for me and really formative for me. So that's an easy question.
Nice. I love it when people go to talk about their family. It's very touching. I like it. Tommy, thank you very, very, very much for your answers. And like you mentioned yourself, there is a lot of topics that we could do definitely a separate our podcast on. But thank you very much for your patience with the questions, and thank you for the answers. And please don't hang up just yet, by the way. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
This content was created by the Citizen Web3 Validator. You may support our work by delegating to any of our nodes.